Welcome back, Caleb Bond in for Paul Murray. Well, it's been 8 months since horrific floods ravaged regional Australia, of course destroying homes, leaving families and businesses in financial ruin. And despite the many promises from Canberra, to this point little to nothing has been done for towns like Eugowra or Orange, and residents have more or less been left to pick up the pieces themselves. Nationals leader David Littleproud is on the ground visiting these flood-hit regional towns, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now. You're up in Mudgee tonight. What's the lay of the land, mate?
Yeah, look, I was in Eugowra yesterday. Got to say, they're stoic, but they're still looking for that final piece of support, which is that home resilience package. And we asked the Prime Minister about 3 weeks ago about would he institute that package that he put into Lismore, where residents can either sell their land and go and buy another piece of land and build, or they can lift their houses above flood level and they can stay where they are. And unfortunately, they still haven't been given that confidence. And the Prime Minister gave me an undertaking that he'd continue to work through that. And it's important he does, because no one wants to leave Eugowra. There's plenty of work to be done there, not only in rebuilding the town, but work to be done in terms of the community. There's jobs galore there, and they just want the confidence of moving on and being able to get on with the job. So the Prime Minister needs to work with the New South Wales government, who has let these residents down, because they're the ones that actually deliver this project. And until they do that, these people are in abeyance. And while I was there, I also heard about a big announcement by the federal government around mental health. I texted the Prime Minister, and got to say, in his defence, within 10 minutes he'd responded and said he'll sort that out. There was a real need there now for mental health as we get to that 8-month mark, is that people heal at different levels, and they need to be able to have that support. So that next phase of mental support is required, and Prime Minister's given me a commitment he'll do that. But it's important we don't forget these communities, as we don't in the north coast of New South Wales. And if you go to Lismore today, that home resilience program hasn't even touched the sides. There's about 6,000 homes that need to be lifted or sold, and I think what the government's provided is only for enough for about 1,000. So there's a real need for us to step up, and this isn't about politics, this is about outcomes. We're just saying to the Prime Minister, whether it be in Lismore or whether it be in Eugowra or Molong today, the people just want some confidence. They need hope. And if you give them that hope, they'll get on with the job. As they said to me in Eugowra yesterday, they're not looking for the Ritz, they're just looking for their town to be returned.
But where are some of these people actually living at the moment, 8 months on?
Yeah, they're living in caravans or in pods on their properties. And I've got to say, that has been, in somewhat, some success story. Yeah. And look, in defence, that's a little bit about getting tradies out there and being able to do it. Insurance companies have been abhorrent. I've got to say, the insurance industry should hang their head in shame. Many of them are still fighting with not only business owners but also residential owners about the fact that their insurance policy, even though they're covered for flood, only covered for 3 inches, not 3 foot. Now, that's BS. I'm sorry. If you get floodwaters just because of the fact that it was a bigger flood than normal and it was 3 foot rather than 3 inches, face up to it, insurance companies. And they have lost their social licence in this country, and we have lost all confidence in the insurance industry, and it's time for government to intervene, to inject themselves into a failed marketplace. And this is just abhorrent that I saw a business owner today in Molong, a gym owner that is prepared, had insurance, but because it was not 3 inches but 3 foot, she lost everything. And it wasn't for the $50,000 grant.
Dead set disgusting.
It's wrong. It's absolutely disgusting. You're spot on, and this is where we need to square up with these insurance companies and say, you can't do this to your fellow Australian. If you're going to have an insurance policy for flood cover, they paid for flood cover. No matter the extent or the level, the height of that flood water, face up to it, pay up, and then if you don't want to do it after that, well and good, but pay out what you owe these people for the premiums they paid. If you don't want to go moving on, we get that. But that's just abhorrent behaviour. That's un-Australian. Yeah. And whether it be Suncorp, whether it be QBE or NRMA, you know what? They should get stuffed. They are hurting Australian families out there, and it's time for government to intervene.
100%. Now, the voice to Parliament, obviously, Linda Burney, Indigenous Affairs Minister, was up yesterday at the National Press Club. You were one of the first people in your party, the Nationals, were the first party to come out and say that you would be backing the No campaign. I reckon every time Linda Burney opens her mouth, she sets the Yes campaign back 5 steps.
Yeah, well, there's no detail. And then to try and deflect and to say that there's some sort of Trump politics being brought into this country, when not only Peter Dutton and myself asked valid questions of a government that wants to change your constitution, that she cannot provide the answers, demonstrates not only is there a lack of detail in even understanding it, but what they're trying to hide. The government owns the Parliament. They can actually control the Parliament and what legislation comes through. So if the government wants to build the trust of the Australian people, why would they not put the legislation, the mechanics of the voice, table that in the Parliament so not just politicians can see, but so the Australian people can see? If the Prime Minister isn't prepared to bring the Australian people into his trust, why would they trust him? And then when you've got an Indigenous Affairs Minister that did not answer a question, simply deflected and simply made bold and very broad statements without getting into the detail of what the mechanics of this is, should cast very big doubt to the Australian people about gaining trust and what they're asking for. This is permanent. This is a permanent change. There is no ambitious goal. We all want to close the gap. But the Nationals got to a principled position we couldn't support this because we've had a representative body before. That representative body called ASIC failed us, and we live with those consequences. But when they're not prepared to even show the mechanics of this to the Australian people, and they're putting this to perpetuity, and then they're not even saying that we will close the gap and have an ambitious goal of saying by 2030 or 2035 or 2040 we'll have closed the gap, but instead putting up the white flag and effectively saying for perpetuity we have failed and they will never close the gap because we have to have this in our constitution, says that effectively this government has given up. Now, they should not conflate a voice, which is a bureaucratic body that will add another layer of bureaucracy where we need a better bureaucracy, not a bigger one, with constitutional recognition.
Yeah, they're two totally different
Anthony Albanese.
And if they split it up, you would get constitutional recognition over the line. I'm sorry, we've got to go, David, but good luck on your quest up there with the flood victims. I hope we get something out of them.